ever been punched in the gut with a smile? It was a Tuesday, late April. The bluebonnets were blooming outside my hospital window, and I remember thinking how strange it was to see something so beautiful while I felt so broken. I'd had a minor stroke, nothing too dramatic, but enough to knock the wind out of me. I was 66, retired, and trying my best to stay active. You know, daily walks, ladies' Bible study on Wednesdays, and fussing over my little garden out back. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and I trusted him to be there if I ever hit a bump in the road. So when I woke up in that hospital bed with my husband of 38 years sitting at the edge of the mattress holding a manila folder, I didn't think much of it. I figured it was insurance paperwork or maybe a card from the grandkids. But nope, that man, Jerry, looked me dead in the eye, lips pressed like he was doing me a favor, and said, "I think it's time we talk about moving on." I thought maybe the stroke messed with my hearing. He laid the folder down on the tray beside my ginger ale and said, "I've already signed. It's filed. All I need is your signature." Divorce papers. In a hospital. While I'm recovering from a stroke. I didn't cry. Not then. I just stared at him, thinking how small his shoulders looked all of a sudden. Like I was finally seeing the man behind the act. And you know what? There was no trace of guilt in his voice. Just urgency. Like he had a dentist appointment after this. And then, like some daytime soap opera villain, he stood up, leaned in, and whispered, "It's for the best, Ruth. I'll come back tomorrow so we can talk logistics." And just like that, he left. Now, here's the part that made the day just a touch sweeter. As Jerry strolled out of the hospital, probably rehearsing some freedom speech in his head, he walked into the parking lot and saw a tow truck backing up to his shiny black SUV. The look on his face, I didn't see it, but I felt it in my soul. You see, the SUV was in my name, had been since we bought it. And just last week, before my stroke, I got a notice about late payments. Turns out Jerry hadn't been paying it, too busy funding business trips that never seemed to pay off. So I did what any logical woman would do after 38 years of being the responsible one. I called the bank, told them to come get it, and I meant it. That tow truck didn't just take his car. It took his pride. And I can bet good money he stood there watching it get hauled off, looking like a lost boy at recess. But bless his heart, he still had no idea that was just the beginning. I hadn't even opened the real door yet. He thought I was weak, that the hospital bed and my quietness meant defeat. He had no clue that while my left arm was healing, my right hand was about to write the next chapter of my life. And honey, it was going to read like a slow burn with a twist he never saw coming. And the kicker? The woman he left me for? She knew me better than anyone. But we'll get to her soon enough. You'd think coming home from the hospital would feel like a relief. But walking back into that house felt more like stepping into a stranger's kitchen. Nothing had moved, but everything felt different. The curtains still swayed with the Texas breeze. My favorite Afghan was still folded neatly at the edge of the recliner. But it was like the soul had been sucked out of it all. That man had taken my peace and tried to leave me with empty air. My daughter Cheryl, God bless her, brought me home and fussed over me like she was the mama and I was the child. She had set up my pill organizer, even put new batteries in the remote because she knew how I cussed when it lagged. She didn't ask about the papers. Not yet. I think she was scared I'd break. But I didn't break. I boiled. See, in all those quiet moments when folks thought I was sleeping in that hospital bed, I was thinking. Counting up things that didn't add up. Trips he took that didn't quite make sense. Receipts in his jacket for restaurants I'd never stepped foot in. That weird little burner phone he claimed he used for old work contacts. But what I hadn't expected was who came knocking that Sunday evening. I was just easing into my recliner, Cheryl gone home to her babies, a warm blanket around my legs. The sun was setting slow, the way it does in spring, making the window panes glow orange gold. And then there it was. A knock. Light, hesitant, familiar. I opened that door, and there stood her, Lacey, my cousin's daughter, technically, but I always called her my cousin. She's 34, bright smile, always popping in with wine and gossip like a little whirlwind. We'd been close. She even called me Aunt Ruthie sometimes when she was in a playful mood. She had a casserole dish in her hands, and that smile, the one I used to love, was shaky, like her face hadn't caught up with her nerves. "Hi, Aunt Ruthie," she said, eyes darting past me into the house. "I heard what happened. I wanted to come by and check on you." I should have known then. Something about the way her voice cracked on "check on you" didn't sit right. And she looked tired, worn, not like someone who'd been resting easy at night, more like someone carrying a secret with sharp corners. But I smiled, because Southern manners don't melt overnight. "Well, ain't that sweet?" I said, stepping aside. "Come on in. That casserole looks better than anything I've had all week." She came in, set the dish on the counter. She looked around like she expected him to be there. He wasn't. He hadn't come home since he dropped the papers. Not a call, not a text, not a "how are you feeling," not even a check-in with Cheryl. And now here was Lacey, too quiet, too eager. She sat across from me, smoothing her jeans, twisting the ring on her finger. No, not a wedding ring. Just one of those dainty little stackables that young women wear. I stared at her hand longer than I meant to. And then it hit me. I remembered seeing that same ring once, sitting in the dish on Jerry's nightstand. I thought maybe it belonged to a neighbor's kid, or maybe Cheryl's daughter had played dress up and left it behind. But no, that ring had a story, and I was about to find it. "Lacey," I said slowly, my voice as even as I could manage, "when was the last time you saw Jerry?" Her face flushed pink, not like embarrassment, like panic. "Oh, I think it was at your birthday, wasn't it?" she said, eyes avoiding mine. Lie. She'd forgotten I'd already started piecing it together, that I'd seen a call on Jerry's phone once, just a flash of it, labeled L. Not Lisa, not Linda, just L. And the way he used to straighten his shirt when she walked into the room, like a teenager trying to impress the babysitter, it made me sick now. I gave her a long look, and I didn't say a word. Just let her stew in the silence. Let her feel it. Let her guess how much I knew. She didn't stay long. Said she had errands. Left the casserole. Said I should rest and heal. She had no idea what I was healing for. That night, I opened the papers he left on my hospital tray. He'd signed them all right. But in his rush, he must have forgotten I still held the power of attorney for all our joint assets. That stroke didn't take my mind. It sharpened it. He thought he was divorcing the fragile wife. But what he didn't know was, he was divorcing the woman who knew exactly where every bone in his closet was buried, and who'd been quietly digging up the dirt. And baby, I was just getting started. I didn't sleep much that night. Not from pain. The doctors had that under control. But from clarity. There's something about betrayal that sobers you up real quick. You start seeing things you overlooked for years. Like how Jerry always kept that one folder locked in his office drawer. Or how Lacey started stopping by more often right around the time Jerry began staying out late for those real estate seminars. And I remembered something else. About a month before my stroke, I got a bank alert. Said our joint account had transferred $5,000 to a consulting business. I had asked Jerry about it, and he brushed it off. "Business deal," he said. "You wouldn't understand the details." Turns out he was right, because the details included a beachfront Airbnb in Corpus Christi and 2 tickets to a couple's massage. Yep, I found the receipt. You know what else I found? Pictures. Not the scandalous kind. No, nothing risque. Just little things. A woman's cardigan folded on our bed in the background of a selfie he took to show off the new TV. 2 wine glasses by the fire pit when he said he was on a solo fishing trip. And one blurry shot in the bathroom mirror, where Lacey's very distinctive sunflower tattoo peeked out over his shoulder. Now, I know better than to jump to conclusions. But sweetheart, when the clues line up like ducklings in a row, you don't need a magnifying glass. You just need a plan. So the next morning, I called the lawyer. Old Mr. Dean. He did our will back in the early 2000s. Nice man. Stubborn as a mule, but sharp as a tack. He came to the house in his khakis and that same leather briefcase he's probably had since Carter was president. Ruth, he said, you sure you want to go down this road? Divorce ain't easy at our age. I smiled. He already started it, Dean. I'm just choosing the direction. We went through everything. I told him about the money, the car, the late payments, the tow truck, the hospital ambush, even the casserole. And I'll never forget the way he paused, pen in hand, and said, "Cousin, you said?" "Yup," I said, looking him dead in the eye. "Family dinners, birthday parties, the works." He shook his head like he'd seen this movie before. "Well," he said slowly, "he might have underestimated you." Oh, honey, he had no idea. Because while Mr. Dean handled the legal prep, I was busy handling everything else. I canceled Jerry's access to all the joint accounts, froze the savings, pulled the title to the house, which was in my name, thanks to my mama leaving me the down payment 30 years ago. He always talked like the house was his. But baby, paperwork don't lie. I changed the locks that week. Now, that may sound dramatic, but let me tell you, when a man you fed, washed clothes for, and prayed over for almost 4 decades serves you papers while you're in a hospital gown, dramatic becomes necessary. Cheryl came by to help. She didn't ask a lot of questions, just brought over a drill and helped me swap out every deadbolt. We laughed a little too hard for 2 women changing locks on a Sunday, but there's healing in laughter, even when it's half-bitten and bitter. Then I did one more thing. I packed up a box, Jerry's keepsakes, his old fishing hat, that awful cologne he thought made him smell expensive, and a note, short and sweet. Your copy of the divorce papers. The locks have been changed. Please have your new address mailed to my lawyer. Oh, and tell Lacey the casserole was dry. I left it all by the front door. Didn't even bother to call him. I figured if he wanted closure, he could read it off the back of the tow truck the next time his ego got repoed. And let me tell you something. There is nothing more peaceful than taking your power back, quietly, gracefully, without screaming or scenes. Just decisive action and the strength to stand in your own home and say, not today, not ever again. But of course, the story wasn't done. Because not long after the locks were changed and the account got frozen, Lacey called me, from his number. And her voice? It was shaking. The call came just after sunset. You know that time of evening where the sky is still light, but the ground's already swallowed in shadow? That strange in-between hush where even the birds quiet down. That's when the phone rang. His number. My heart didn't skip. It didn't even flinch. I just stared at the screen, watching those digits flash like an old wound knocking on the door again. But when I answered, it wasn't Jerry's voice I heard. It was hers. "Hi, Aunt Ruthie." There was that voice, soft, syrupy, trembling. She sounded like a kid who got caught stealing candy, but was hoping you'd just give her a hug and say, "Bless your heart." I didn't say anything right away. Just let the silence do the talking. I didn't mean for this to happen, she rushed out. It wasn't supposed to go this far. I was confused. I didn't think he'd actually, she trailed off. Didn't think he'd actually leave me. Didn't think he'd blow up 2 families for a fling in the guest room. Or didn't think I'd fight back. "Lacey," I said, calm and steady, "if this is about that casserole, I already told you it was dry." She gave a weak laugh, like she was hoping that would break the ice. But I wasn't here to melt. Then she said it, barely above a whisper. "I think I made a mistake." And there it was, that sad little confession floating between us like a helium balloon about to pop. "He's not who I thought he was," she added. "Oh, honey, tell me something I don't know." Apparently, he'd told her he and I had been basically separated for years. That I didn't really love him. that he was trapped. The same man who cried at our 35th anniversary dinner, who still wore the silver watch I got him when Cheryl was born. The same man who told me I was his anchor when his brother died. That man looked my baby cousin in the eye and painted me like a dead marriage on life support. And now he's acting different, she said, voice barely holding. He's angry all the time. He's saying he'll get lawyers involved if I try to leave. He slammed a drawer so hard last night it cracked the wood. She paused. He's not who I thought he was, she said again, like maybe the words would rewrite the damage. I let her sit in it for a moment, and then I said, Sweetheart, men like Jerry, they don't change. They just run out of people to lie to. She started crying. Not those ugly sobs. Just that soft, broken kind of weeping women do when they realize they've set fire to the only bridge that led back home. I'm scared, she said. I could have said, you should be, but I didn't. Instead, I said, you were family to me. I loved you like a niece. I opened my home, gave you space, trusted you, and you let him convince you I was the villain in my own story. She didn't argue. She didn't defend herself. She knew. And part of me, somewhere deep down where the maternal instinct still clung, felt for her. Not because I excused it, but because I knew what it was to be swept into something you think is love, only to wake up choking on the consequences. I didn't tell her what I'd already done. Didn't tell her I'd already filed a restraining order after I found out Jerry tried to withdraw $8,000 from our line of credit the day after he served me. I froze every single asset he could possibly touch, thanks to my lawyer, who called him a little arrogant fool with no sense of timing. Didn't tell her about the copies of the receipts I sent to his job's ethics committee either. No, I let her talk. And when she hung up, after whispering, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you, I just sat in my recliner sipping a lukewarm cup of tea. Because sorry, don't plant flowers on a grave. And hers wasn't the only call that came that week. The next day, Jerry called me. Not to apologize. No, to threaten. Said if I didn't agree to sign a clean divorce, he'd expose some financial missteps I made during our marriage. He didn't know I was recording the call. Didn't know I'd already spoken to the bank manager who confirmed that he'd been moving money into a secret account for the last year, under a fake business name. He thought I was still the same Ruth who'd ironed his shirts and smiled through his tantrums. But I wasn't. Not anymore. So I said, Jerry, you should have remembered one thing before you served me those papers in a hospital bed. What's that? He barked. I smiled into the phone. This ain't my first rodeo, but it sure as hell will be your last. By the time the court date rolled around, I wasn't nervous. I'd done my crying. I'd buried the marriage in my heart long before the papers got signed. Now I just wanted to make sure the man who tried to humiliate me in a hospital gown walked out of that courtroom with nothing but the echo of his bad decisions. We walked in on opposite sides. He was wearing that cheap gray suit he always reserved for funerals and courtrooms, thinking it made him look like somebody. Lacey didn't come with him. I figured she wouldn't. After our call, I suspect she realized Jerry didn't have enough charm or character to keep anything alive, much less a stolen relationship. I wore navy blue. Not because of anything symbolic, it just felt powerful, strong, not loud, not pitiful. Me. My lawyer, Mr. Dean, had a whole binder full of receipts, bank transfers, emails, even text messages Jerry forgot to delete from our family iCloud. He thought he was being slick, but baby, I had screenshots for days. Jerry tried to play it cool at first, acting like this was all just a misunderstanding. Told the judge I was mentally unwell, that I was vindictive since the stroke. That's when Mr. Dean leaned in and slid a printed transcript across the table. It was the phone recording, the one where Jerry threatened to blackmail me, loud and clear. And guess what? He said Lacey's name 3 times. The judge raised her brow. So you're admitting you had an affair with the petitioner's cousin while still married? He started to stutter. It wasn't. Just yes or no, Mr. Thompson. Yes, he mumbled. There it was. No dramatic gasp, no courtroom gasp like in those TV movies. Just truth, clean and brutal. By the end of the hearing, the judge ruled that due to marital misconduct and attempted financial fraud, I would retain the house, all personal assets, and a portion of his retirement pension. He was also ordered to repay the funds he'd withdrawn behind my back with interest. When we walked out, he tried to talk to me. Ruth, he said, trying that same pitiful voice he once used when I found lipstick on his collar in '98. We don't have to do it like this. We can still, maybe find peace. I turned to him, calm as the day I married him. You had peace, Jerry. You just didn't know how to keep it. Then I walked past him, heels clicking down those courthouse steps like a damn drumbeat. But I wasn't done. A week later, I listed his old car, the one I'd repossessed, to fund a small trip for myself. Nothing too wild. Just a nice little solo getaway to Fredericksburg. Wine, a soft bed, and a whole lot of silence. I stayed at a little inn owned by a retired widow named Dottie, who told me about her own divorce 20 years ago after her husband ran off with his secretary. We laughed, we cried a little, and then we laughed some more. And somewhere between sipping Chardonnay under the stars and flipping through a Nora Roberts novel, it hit me. I was free. Free from betrayal, from swallowing my pain for the sake of keeping the peace. Free from being someone's emotional mule. Jerry thought handing me divorce papers at my lowest would break me. What he didn't know? That was the spark. The one that lit the fuse on everything I had buried deep inside. My strength. My clarity. My power. So now, here I am, 66, living in my own house, sleeping better than I have in years. I joined a little pickleball group. I started gardening again. Heck, I even tried online dating for a week, though I shut that down fast. Turns out, everyone over 60 thinks a good first message is hey cutie, you still got teeth? But I'm not bitter. I'm better. And if there's one thing I've learned through it all, it's this. Never underestimate a woman who's been left for dead and lived to tell the story.